Philadelphia Eagles, that's probably the best team that you want to play down or play up to, too, because Anthony, we might have some new NFC favorites. I know you were talking about your Buccaneers and your Rams, but Anthony, I feel like you got to give props to your team. I think the Minnesota Vikings are a favorite this year. I don't think it's out of the realm of the possibility that the Vikings could represent the NFC this year in the Super Bowl. I look at their schedule, it's a favorable schedule. I look at the talent, it's a great, talented roster. I look at the coaching history. Another person from the I get it. People are going to say technically it's the Mike Shanahan coaching tree, but I'm going to say the Sean McVay coaching tree. Another person from the Sean McVay coaching tree, and they have a good representation lately of making it to the Super Bowl. I look at your defense, which I felt, underrated performance by your defense. You guys got the quarterbacks. You got a lot of strong veterans, Harrison Smith, Patrick Peterson. You guys got Danielle Hunter back, which I felt you guys were missing last year. He went down with injury. You have Danielle Hunter back, and Eric Kendricks is another really good linebacker, probably one of the most underrated players in the NFL. I look at your team, Anthony, and I think, hey, this is an underrated team here. This is a team that can represent the NFC. Do you feel like the road can go through Minnesota? Do you feel good about your Vikings? Is this just a week one overreaction?
I don't. As a Vikings fan, I hate. Some people like being biased about their team. I don't. I don't like to give them too much credit, but I think they could be. I think this offensive line. I think it's probably the best offensive line the Vikings have had since AP went for 2000, 10 years ago. Now that Mike Zimmer's gone, you don't see. I saw during the game. When the Vikings would take a lead like they did. Second half, they kind of, just rely on the running game. Don't make any too crazy passes, but they just kept going at it. I think now that they finally have a coach that's not just going to run it a lot of the time. Dalvin's a great running back, but you have arguably the best wide receiver in the league, Justin Jefferson, on the team. And, Kirk Cousins he had more receiving yards in that one game than he's had in any single game in his first 2 years. I think it really showed this offense, Kirk Cousins, I'm a big fan. I think most people would say he's at least a borderline top 10 quarterback. And I think with this new coach, I think Kevin O'Connell can really make Kirk Cousins a good quarterback, and Ed Dontel and the defense a lot better than I thought it would be. I mean, a lot of these pieces are the same as last year. It's just a new coach, and it's a lot better. If they play like they did week one, I mean, they definitely deserve to be in the conversation for a team to beat in the NFC.
And like I said, that Sean McVay coaching tree, or Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan, whoever you want to give credit to that coaching tree, started where? In Washington. Where did Kirk Cousins start? Washington. So there's a lot of connection there. And I really do think, Cousins, I think, is very, I know how you feel about Kirk Cousins. You love him. I feel he's sometimes underappreciated, but I wouldn't put him super high on the list of top 10 quarterbacks. He's 10. He can rotate out 10 through 12. It just depends how those 10 through 12 play with each other and stuff like that. So that's how I feel about Kirk Cousins. But maybe he can get the job done. But there's another team, Anthony, I want to throw out there who I think is an NFC favorite. Anthony, what do you think about those Philadelphia Eagles? I mean, I was going through my NFL breakdowns earlier this season, and I said to myself, man, I just don't know if there's any team that's I just don't know if there's any team that stands out in the NFC East. And then I looked at the Eagles. I looked at the roster. I saw that they traded for Gardner Johnson, the strong safety from New Orleans. I remember they picked up James Bradbury. I was looking at that defense, and I said, wow, that's a pretty solid defense. They picked up a former Charger and Kaiser White, who I liked a lot, very good coverage linebacker. And then I looked at their offense, and I said, man, this offense with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, the tight end, Dallas Goedert, you got Jalen Hurts at quarterback. This team right here could be a favorite in the NFC. And Anthony, I just got to ask, do you agree with me? Do you feel the Eagles could be a favorite in the NFC? Especially, you got to look at their division. They're in the easiest division when it comes to football. And you know what it's like, Anthony. You remember, let's go back. I know you don't want to remember this, but remember back in the day, a few years ago, it was in Philadelphia, Vikings versus Philadelphia and the NFC Championship. there's one team that's hard to beat if you get them in the playoffs in January. And I think it's the Eagles because they're like, I was looking at all the teams too, and I'm a big weather guy. I believe weather does matter, especially in the NFC. I was looking at all the teams that are making the playoffs. I'm like, they play in the dome, they play in the dome, they play inside, they play inside. Eagles still play outside. They're still old school football. You put them as the first seed, which I think is possible for them to get, and teams have to travel to Philadelphia. I think that matters. But Anthony, I want to hear your thoughts. I'm hyping up the Eagles, but I think with good reason.
I mean, I think they have, especially with Dak out, that was their biggest competition right there. They should easily beat the Cowboys while Dak's away, and they'll probably drop a few games. I mean, they already dropped week 1, but beyond that, they should drop games. That's their biggest worry. The Giants pulled off the surprise win, but I'm not expecting a ton from the Giants this year. And Carson Wentz, I'm not the biggest fan of. So with that in mind, the other 3 teams really shouldn't be too much competition. It's the Eagles division to lose, and I don't think that'll happen. So, I mean, that alone puts them with at least one home game in the playoffs. The NFC is weaker. I feel like this is a team that, you throw this team in the AFC, no way they're a Super Bowl favorite. Put them in the NFC though, which they are, maybe, I don't think I'm going to buy the stock that they're a Super Bowl contender just yet, but winning the division definitely puts you in that conversation at least.
I know a lot of people will look at Jalen Hurts and they'll say, "Oh, well, look at that playoff game against Tampa Bay, Chase." I know, I get it, I understand. Jalen Hurts is one of those quarterbacks though that's annoying to play against in the playoffs. And now you add going to Philadelphia to the mix, which I think they can easily lock up the first seed. Looking at that NFC East and looking at that schedule, I really do feel like this is the Eagles' conference to lose. In my personal, and you can mark me down on this, Anthony. If I'm wrong, if the Eagles don't even make the playoffs, I'll eat crow. I'll eat crow on that one. I'll eat an eagle. Oh, well, that's banned. But I'll eat crow. I'll eat crow for sure.